Hi everybody, and welcome back to Cardiac Reading for Teens. For those of you who don't know, Cardiac Reading for Teens is a place where teens can come together with other teens to learn about Spiritist teachings and topics in a way that makes more sense to us and is more relatable to us as teenagers in today's society. Because oftentimes we have lecturers or even the books that have big complicated words that we don't understand, or it takes us a little more effort. So here we can break down the teachings of Spiritism and explain them in simple everyday terms so that we can understand and we can put it into our daily lives. So last week, what we started talking about was family ties, because we're in the section talking about in the gospel, according to Spiritism. We're in the section talking about reincarnation, and we talked about the difference between reincarnation and resurrection, and how in the Bible they use resurrection, but we know what they really meant was reincarnation in certain points. And within that, we started talking about family ties and how families don't separate after death, right? Even if it's your family for this corporeal life, if you have a true connection, a true affiliation with that person, then you're still going to be connected. And maybe you won't be in the same family again in your next incarnation, but when you look at like our reincarnations, like our different corporeal existences, they're so short. It's such a short amount of time compared to the eternity that we live on for. So it's just like we take a little break from our loved ones, but then we get to go back to them. And they show how these families, these people who are closely related, like mentally and on the same vibration and connected to each other by their love and sympathy for one another, those people, they help each other even when they're separated from one another. And sometimes you do come back with those people and they are with you in a corporeal existence to help you along, so you both can help better yourselves at the same time. So families don't disappear at death, at our corporeal death. They stay strong. If it's someone that we're truly connected with, then we'll stay connected with them. And it's not like, oh, this is my mom from that corporeal existence, or this is my sister. No, everyone's just it's just people that you're affiliated with, that you're connected with, that you have mutual affection towards. So then we left off on the section 23 of family ties. In conclusion, 4 alternatives present themselves to man for his future beyond the tomb. Firstly, nothingness, according to the material doctrine. Secondly, absorption into the universe, according to the pantheist idea. Thirdly, individuality with a fixed and definite destiny, according to the church. And fourthly, individuality with constant progress, according to the Spiritist doctrine. So here it's saying the different beliefs that exist on earth are basically can conclude to, some people believe that after death there's nothing, right? That's it. That's when you're thinking only about the material body, right? Because it's true, for the material body there's nothing left. That material body's gonna decompose and just turn back into molecules that are gonna turn into something else. So if you're looking at it only materialistically, nothing is after death. Or some ideas believe that we're going to be absorbed into the universe. Kind of like we're all little raindrops, and then after we die, we're just put back into the ocean, and you can't tell us apart. We're just put back all together. Thirdly, there's people who believe, okay, we're still going to be like individual people, but our destiny is determined according to the church, right? Determined on what we did and not. And fourthly, Spiritism is saying that there's individuality with constant progress, right? So there is individuality, like the Catholic Church that they're talking about. We are still going to be our own person, our own spirit, but we're going to have constant progress, right? We know Spiritism adds that part, that we're constantly progressing. We're not stuck where we left off at the end of this life. We have time to progress. But of course, we will, like the concept of heaven and hell. If we did a lot of wrong, we are going to suffer before we're able to keep progressing, right? We're going to suffer to learn from those mistakes. Or if we do really well, and as we go evolving, we'll get to that state of like happiness, like that heaven, quote unquote. So it's not that those are completely wrong, but it's more of like a mental state, and we know that that's not fixed, right? You're not definitely there. Like, you can progress to get there. And then it continues. In the first two of these alternatives, family ties are interrupted at the time of death, and no hope is left for these souls of ever meeting again in the future. With the third alternative, there is a possibility of meeting again, if each has gone to the same region, which might be either heaven or hell. But with the plurality of existences, which is inseparable from gradual progress, there is certainty of the continuity of relationships between those who love, and this is what constitutes the true family. So here it's showing us how in the first two, right, family ties aren't gonna last because they're saying that nothing is after death, or that we're all back in the universe and it's kind of like we're not individuals anymore. In the third one with the church, it's like maybe you could be with them, but only if you all go to heaven, right? Or maybe if you all go to hell, like only if you're in the same region together. It's not a 100% guarantee. But with the Spiritist doctrine, we see that there's more existences, right? There's more out there. So you will be reconnected with those people if you truly have and that relationship. Then you'll have a true family, and those people will stick by you. And maybe, you won't see them for one incarnation, but you'll see them the next, or you'll see them in the spirit world, because you have that true bond and that true love together. And now we're on to the next section, which is instructions from the spirits. And the first little subsection is limits of incarnations. So this is a question that was presented to the spirits. What are the limits of incarnation? So they're saying when we incarnate, what are the limits? And incarnate, you can literally split up to like carnate, right? Like to be of carn, with like carne, which is like meat, flesh. So what are the limits of incarnation? And the spirits responded to this question. In actual fact, incarnation does not have clearly defined limits. If we are thinking of the envelope which constitutes the physical covering of the spirit, since the materiality of this covering diminishes in the proportion as the spirit purifies itself. In certain worlds more advanced than Earth, this covering is already less compact, less heavy, more refined, and consequently less subject to vicissitudes. In worlds of still higher elevation, it is translucent and almost fluidic. It dematerializes by degrees and finally becomes absorbed by the perispirit. According to the kind of world in which it lives, the spirit reclothes itself with a covering appropriate to that world. So here they're saying that there's not exactly any limits per se, because it depends on how evolved you are. Right now, we know Earth is not as evolved, so we have these heavy material bodies, and that's why we're limited. But once you progress more, and there's the higher evolved worlds, they're less material, and as you go progressing, you get less and less material, and more, like they said, translucent and almost fluidic. So that can happen. So it's not that the reincarnation is what makes you limited, but it's how evolved you are and what kind of material body you're gonna have. If you're not as evolved, like us on Earth, we have these heavy material bodies, and those create limitation. That creates limitations for us. But highly evolved spirits that are in highly evolved worlds, they don't have such a dense body, so they're not as limited. So the limited doesn't come with with reincarnation, but it comes with how evolved we are and where we are, like what world we are. And they're saying, like, when the spirit comes, it has to reclothe itself, basically. So depending on what planet or what world we go to, we reclothe ourselves into a suitable, right? Like if it's winter, we wear a heavy coat. If it's summer, we wear shorts and a t-shirt. So the same thing, it kind of adjusts to the different worlds. And so the limit is not with reincarnation, but with the evolution that we are at, or the world's at. Then it continues. The perispirit itself also undergoes successive transformations. It becomes more and more etheric until it reaches complete purification, which is the state of all immaculate spirits. If special worlds are destined for more highly advanced spirits, they do not remain prisoners there, as in the inferior world. The special state of detachment in which they find themselves allows them to travel to any part of the universe to which they may be called on missions. So they're saying also the perispirit also goes through these transformations. So as we know how our, like when we're sleeping, right, our perispirit is connected to the spirit world and still learning. Maybe when this heavy corporeal body is resting. But the thing, it gets more etheric and until it reaches complete perfection. So in special worlds, these spirits and paraspirits can just travel to all over the universe because they have their permission. Okay, let's go, because they're not restricted, right? Their paraspirit is not restricted to how far it can go, per se. So again, this is not a restriction about reincarnation, but a restriction about how evolved we are and what world we're inhabiting. Then they continue. If we consider incarnation from the material viewpoint, such as can be verified here on Earth, we can say that it is limited to inferior worlds. But it depends on each spirit to liberate itself more or less quickly, by working towards purification. We should also consider that in the disincarnate state, that is to say, in the interval between bodily existences, the situation of each spirit depends on the nature of the world to which it is linked by the degree of advancement it has acquired. Thus, in the spirit world, we are more or less happy, free or enlightened, according to the degree of dematerialization achieved. So, once we get, and that's what we're talking about, the material viewpoint. But they're also saying that it depends on what we do, right? So even on Earth, yes, we have these very material bodies, but were we very materialistic, or do we let go of those material needs and wants and just focus on bettering ourselves and working hard? And those things will also help our advancement, and they will help us, and that will help us to move to evolve, right? To not be in such a material body, or if you have this material body, to just not let those material things kind of take over your life. And in the spirit world, it just depends what we've done, how we've progressed, right? So they're saying we are more or less happy, free or enlightened, according to how much dematerialization we achieved, how much away from matter we moved, and thinking more about spiritual and our virtues, values, and all of that. So it's not that we're limited, right? We don't have to be limited. We just have to improve ourselves so that we don't have to have such strict like confinement, right? Like our spirit is in this confinement, this heavy material body, when it doesn't have to be. We just have to learn more and grow more, and we can change that. And then now the next section, that is still the instruction from the spirits. It's the need for incarnation. So now they're saying, okay, so why do we incarnate? And there's a question that was asked to the spirits. Is incarnation a punishment, and are guilty spirits bound to suffer them? So is this a punishment that we have to go through? Like, oh, you did all these things wrong, like go back and fix it? And the spirits answered, the passing of spirits through corporeal life is necessary in order that they may fulfill by means of material action the purpose to which God assigned them. This is necessary for their own good, as the activity that they are obliged to perform will help the development of their intelligence. Being just, God must distribute everything in equal parts to all his children. So it is established that everyone starts from the same point, with the same aptitudes, the same obligations to fulfill, and having the same liberty to proceed. Any type of privilege would be injustice. But for all spirits, incarnation is a transitory state. It is a task imposed by God at the beginning of life, as a primary experiment in the use of free will. Those who discharge this task will with zeal pass over the first steps of their initiation quickly, less painfully, and so are able to reap the fruits of their labor at an earlier date. Those who, on the contrary, make bad use of their liberty that God has granted them, delay their progress according to the degree of obstinacy demonstrated, may prolong the need for reincarnation indefinitely, in which case it can become a punishment. So here they're saying how reincarnation, it's not a punishment. It's something that we all have to go through to better ourselves. That's the way that God, right? God created us all simple and ignorant, right? Ignorant, not knowing anything, and just simple. And we're all at the same state, right? No one has an advantage from anyone. And we want to learn and grow to be able to reach that state of perfection, right? That's the basics, right? We're all created the same, and we want to all get to perfection. We all want to get to that state. So, but now God can't force us, okay, do this, be perfect. No, we have our own free will. Everyone has our own free will. And based on the decisions we make, we're going to evolve quicker or slower. So, and we all have the same, right? We all have to overcome all obstacles and all challenges. It just depends how we do it. And that's what changes it for different people, right? We all were created the same. We all have the same goal. And we all have to pass the same tests, right? The same obstacles. But it depends on how we do it. If I pass it easy, but someone else doesn't pass it, then they're going to have to repeat that so they pass it while I'm going to move on to a different one. And I might get stuck on that other one, but they're going to pass through that other one quickly. So it's just on the individual and how they're going to use their free will to advance. And again, if some people do things very wrong, and you can see that with dramatic cases like world killers, right? We can see that they did a lot of wrong that they're gonna have to correct, so they're gonna keep reincarnating, keep trying to fix it, and it's gonna take them a long time to keep fixing that, so they're gonna go through a lot of suffering. So that basically seems like a punish, it kind of becomes a punishment, because okay, you did all that, you're gonna keep doing this until you finally can get it right, until you finally improve and learn. So in that case, it seems like it becomes sort of a punishment, but it's all in the same, we're all just trying to get better. But where the punishment comes in is when we deviate from the path of the good and start doing wrong things. And that's when we'll be punished, okay, you're going to have to do this again, you're going to have to do this again until you finally get it right. And then section 26 here is a note. A common comparison would make this difference more easily understandable. The scholar cannot reach superior studies in science if he has not passed through the series of classes that lead to that level. These classes, whatever may be the work demanded, are the means by which the student will reach his objective, and are not a punishment that is inflicted upon him. If he is diligent, he can shorten the path that consequently will encounter fewer thorns. However, this does not happen to the one who is neglect and lazy, which will oblige him to repeat certain lessons. It is not the work of the class that is the punishment, but the necessity to recommence the same work over again. So, So here they gave a quick example, which is helpful for us to understand this. So it's like a scholar, right? This person wants to go on to be a doctor or study some crazy type of science like neuroscience or astrophysics or something. Let's think of something really difficult, right? That person, since kindergarten, you're gonna have to take all your classes and you're gonna have to move past them, right? You have to learn, move past them, and continue. So as you go continuing, you'll get to those superior sciences and you can pass those. Once you pass those, then you get to have that job and truly study that, right? Be a scholar in that. But if you're going to be lazy and not do it, then you might fail a class, you might have to retake it, you might keep having to retake it, or you might be just too lazy. And then it's going to take you longer to get to having a job in that crazy science because you didn't pass through it yet and you're going to have to repeat it. So it's the same way. We're all striving, right, for that perfection, that crazy science job, that perfection. And we have all the classes that we have to go through. It just depends on how we pass them, right? And it's not like school that most people pass. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to make a lot of mistakes and we're going to have to retake classes, but that's okay. We just have to, when we retake them, we have to try our best the second time so we don't have to continually retake them. And then it continues. This is what happens to mankind on earth. For the primitive spirit, who is only at the beginning of his spiritual life, incarnation is the means by which he can develop his intelligence. Nevertheless, it is a punishment for an enlightened man, in whom a moral sense has been greatly developed, to be obliged to live over again the various phases of a corporeal life full of anguishes, which he could have arrived at the end of his need to stay in inferior and unhappy worlds. On the other hand, if he works actively towards his moral progress, he not only shortens the period of his material incarnations, but also may jump over the immediate steps that separate him from the superior world. It is possible for spirits to incarnate only once. Is it possible for spirits to incarnate only once in any world and then fulfill their other existences in a different world? This would only be possible if every person were at the exact same point in both intellectual and moral development. The differences between them, from the savage to civilized man, show the many degrees which must be ascended. Besides, an incarnation must have a useful purpose. But what of the short-lived incarnation of children who die at a tender age? Have they suffered to no purpose for themselves or for others? God, whose laws are wise, does nothing that is useless. Through reincarnation on the same globe, and by being once again in contact with each other, he wishes these same spirits to have the desire to repair reciprocated offenses. With the help of past relationship, he wishes to establish family ties on a spiritual basis, founded on the principle of the natural law of solidarity, fraternity, and equality. So, here they're saying that one class is not one world, right? You can't just pass through a whole world in one reincarnation, because that would be the case if everyone on the world was at the same level, right? So let's say everyone is in the same mind, like in the same way of thinking, in the same state of evolution. So everyone's exactly the same. So okay, now you just need to pass one level. If you pass one level, one class, then you get to go to a little bit more evolved world. Well, but we can see that even on Earth, there's people, right, who are, there's many different levels of evolution of people. So as you can see, there's many levels you have to progress within Earth before you can even progress to another world, right? Like, we know Earth started with the primitive people and then now moved up to more civilized people. So we can't just jump all of the evolution of Earth, right, to go to another world. So it does take time in one world. You can't just skip over it in one reincarnation. Or maybe if it's not that world, maybe if you do leave that world, you go to a world that has similar people, similar evolutionary state. So it's not really like you're going to a more advanced world, but staying at that same type of level. And they're saying here, even children that live short lives, like children that die young, that's still a purpose in their incarnation, right? For something, right? Nothing God does is useless. So even these short incarnations give way to evolve or to fix mistakes or something like that. So all of these incarnations that we have are useful tools, even if they might not seem like it. They're useful tools for us to progress and to evolve and to help ourselves get better so that we can get to that better state, right? And yes, it's great that we want to help like everyone get better with us, but our main focus is fixing ourselves because we're not perfect yet. So we need to work on ourselves and of course lend a hand to other people, but realize that they need to come to those realizations and things themselves, right? You can't pull another person along evolving them. You can share your enlightenment with them, but we can't pull each other along. So we have to focus on ourselves. So maybe we can be a role model or helper to our friends or people we meet who don't know Spiritism, and maybe they don't have this knowledge that we have. So we need to kind of try and give them some words of advice, but realize that we are all in the same state, right? We're all still on Earth. We're still trying to do our best and evolve from the state that we're at. So that was the end of chapter 4, and the next chapter is chapter 5. We'll start it next week, and it's talking about blessed are the afflicted. And again, we'll be talking about the words that Jesus said in the Bible, and then talking about kind of how to properly interpret that, right? Like what was the misinterpretation in what that said. But before we leave off today, I'd like to read our message from the Daily Book of Positive Quotations for today's date, July 2nd. This one's titled, Keeping Quiet. There's nothing wrong with having nothing to say, unless you insist on saying it. The people we dread sitting next to at parties aren't the silent ones. However, restricting that the person next to us may be, we can usually find something to say, or we can at least sit there in quiet companionship. No, the people we dread are the ones insisting on filling every moment with the sound of their own voices. They babble on about everything while saying nothing, and we can't wait to find an excuse to get away from them. I don't need to fill in every gap in every conversation. I can listen to others or just sit quietly. No one will think there's something wrong with me if I'm quiet, but they might if I insist on talking all the time. If you all have any questions, comments, concerns, anything you want to talk about at all, related to what we read or not, feel free to email me at cardiacradioforteens@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you right away. I'm Bia, and this has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening. This has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.